Here is Grandpa's old cleaning hacks. You'll wish you knew before, a collection of no-nonsense tricks from a time when things were built to last and cleaned without fancy products. Let's get straight into these timeless tips that still work like a charm. 1. Clean windows with vinegar and newspaper. Back in the day, Grandpa didn't rely on store-bought sprays. He'd mix equal parts white vinegar and water in an old bottle and wipe down windows using crumpled newspaper. The vinegar cut through grime and streaks, while the newspaper left a polished, lint-free shine. Unlike paper towels, which leave fibers behind, newspaper created a smooth finish. This method worked on mirrors, car windows, and even picture frames. Grandpa swore the ink helped buff the glass. No chemicals, no waste, just sparkling clean windows with items already around the house. 2. Scrub floors with salt and lemon. For scuffed or greasy wooden floors, Grandpa skipped store-bought cleaners. He'd sprinkle coarse salt directly onto the stains and squeeze fresh lemon juice over the top. With a sturdy brush or rag, he'd scrub in circles until the grime lifted. The salt worked as a gentle abrasive, and the lemon's acidity broke down oil. Afterward, he'd rinse the area with warm water and dry it with a cloth. Not only did it clean deep, but it left the room smelling fresh. No fake lemon scent, just real citrus from the kitchen. 3. Remove rust with baking soda paste. When Grandpa saw rust on tools, he didn't toss them, he treated them. He mixed baking soda with a few drops of water until it formed a thick paste. Then, using an old rag or a wire brush, he'd rub it into the rusted area. He let it sit for 30 minutes before scrubbing again and rinsing with water. This method was especially useful for garden tools, old hardware, and even metal fixtures. No need for harsh acid, just a gentle, effective remedy that revived old memories. 4. Clean toilets with wood ash and water. Toilet bowl cleaner wasn't a thing in Grandpa's time, but fireplace ash sure was. He'd scoop a small amount of wood ash from the stove, add water to make a loose slurry, and scrub the toilet bowl with it. Ash naturally contains potassium carbonate, which cuts through stains and odors. The gritty texture helped remove mineral buildup without scratching porcelain. It was a bit messy, but Grandpa didn't mind, especially when the result was a gleaming bowl, minus the chemicals and expense. 5. Shine silverware with potato water. Grandpa never let a good resource go to waste. After boiling potatoes, he'd save the starchy water and soak dull silverware in it for 30 minutes. The mild acid in the water loosened tarnish and restored shine. After soaking, he wiped each piece with a soft cloth and rinsed. This method saved money on silver polish and worked wonders on forks, spoons, and serving dishes. It was just another way he made use of everything, even the water from dinner prep. 6. Use cornstarch to clean upholstery. When Grandpa noticed greasy spots on his favorite armchair, he didn't run to the store. He reached for cornstarch. He'd sprinkle a generous amount over the stained fabric and let it sit overnight. The cornstarch absorbed the oils and lifted them from the fibers. The next morning, he'd brush or vacuum it off, revealing a noticeably cleaner patch. This method worked wonders on couches, car seats, and even old wool coats. It was especially handy in winter when mud or food found its way onto furniture. Dry, safe, and effective, just the way Grandpa liked it. 7. White and yellowed linens with lemon juice and sunlight. Grandpa didn't believe in bleach for his Sunday linens. Instead, he soaked them in a tub of hot water with sliced lemons and let them sit for an hour. Then he'd lay them flat in the sun to dry. The lemon's natural acid lifted the yellowing while the sun acted as a gentle bleaching agent. This combination made pillowcases, tablecloths, and even socks look brand new. No chemical fumes, just the power of citrus and sunlight working together the old-fashioned way. 8. Clean burnt pots with salt and boiling water. Whenever soup boiled over and left burnt rings on the pot, Grandpa had a fix. He'd cover the bottom of the pot with salt, then pour in just enough water to create a slurry. He'd bring it to a gentle boil on the stove, scraping as it simmered. The salt loosened burnt-on food without scratching the metal. After 10 minutes, the mess wiped right off. No need to soak overnight or scrub with steel wool. Just salt, heat, and patience. A combo that worked every time. 9. Polish brass with flour, vinegar, and salt. For antique brass doorknobs or fixtures, Grandpa made a homemade polish. He mixed equal parts flour, vinegar, and salt into a thick paste. Then, he'd rub it all over the brass surface, let it sit for 30 to 60 minutes, and buff it with a dry cloth. The result was a gleaming shine, restored without scratching or discoloring. He used this on lamp bases, buckles, and even old tools passed down from his father. It was a trusted recipe passed down through generations. 10. Use old socks to dust everything. Before microfiber cloths existed, Grandpa used what he had, worn-out socks. He'd slip them over his hand and run his fingers over every dusty shelf, blind slat, or ceiling fan blade. The texture of the sock picked up dirt efficiently, and the fitted design made it easy to get into corners. Afterward, he'd shake the sock out, wash it, and use it again. It was cost-free, effective, and sustainable. Every sock got a second life in Grandpa's cleaning routine. 11th, clean mirrors with cold tea. Grandpa didn't toss out the last cup of tea. He cleaned with it. He'd brew strong black tea, let it cool, then pour it into a bowl. Dipping in a clean rag, he'd wipe it across mirrors and glass. The tannins in the tea dissolved greasy spots and fingerprints, and the liquid evaporated streak-free. Once the glass was wiped down, he'd polish it dry with an old cotton cloth. He used this method on bathroom mirrors, glass cabinet doors, and even the truck windshield. Waste nothing, clean everything. That was Grandpa's rule. 12th, use wood ash as a scrubbing agent. Back when Grandpa heated the house with a wood stove, nothing went to waste, including ash. He'd collect the fine powder in a tin and use it to scrub sinks, pots, and even stained concrete. When mixed with a splash of water, ash created a mild alkaline paste that cut through grease and soot. He especially loved it for cleaning soot off the outside of cookware used over an open flame. This method gave a good abrasive scrub without harsh chemicals, and it made use of what would have just been trash. 13. Freshen closets with dried lavender or cedar chips. Grandpa hated musty-smelling closets. Instead of buying air fresheners, he'd tie up small bundles of dried lavender or cedar shavings in cheesecloth and hang them from hangers or tuck them into drawers. The scent repelled moths, absorbed stale odors, and gave his flannel shirts a fresh, woodsy smell. Once every few months, he'd crush the bundles slightly to release more scent. This trick worked especially well in damp basements and old wooden wardrobes. It was simple, effective, and smelled like the countryside. 14. Clean, grimy dishes with sand or crushed eggshells. When camping or during water shortages, Grandpa taught that you don't always need soap. For grimy pans or dishes, he'd toss in a handful of clean sand or crushed eggshells and use it to scrub. The coarse texture removed baked-on food, especially on cast iron or enamel. Rinse with warm water, and you'd be surprised how clean everything came out. It was a tip he used on the trail, in the garden shed, and even after fish fry dinners when the pans needed tough love. 15. Degrease tools with kerosene and a rag. In the garage, Grandpa's tools always looked cared for. His secret? Kerosene. He'd pour a little onto an old rag and wipe down greasy tools after a day's work. The kerosene dissolved the grease, lifted off rust, and left a protective layer behind. After a final wipe down, everything went back in the toolbox, clean and dry. This routine kept pliers, wrenches, and sockets in good shape for decades. And no fancy cleaner could beat the cost, just a little leftover fuel and an old cotton shirt. 16th, mop floors with hot vinegar water. Grandpa didn't use store-bought floor cleaner. He swore by a bucket of hot water mixed with a generous glug of white vinegar. It cut through mud, grease, and even boot scuff marks on wood or linoleum. He'd wring out an old towel or cotton rag, mop with the grain, and let the air do the drying. No artificial shine, just a clean, natural finish. He always said if it's safe enough to pickle your food with, it's safe enough to clean your floors. And the vinegar left everything smelling fresh, not chemically. 17. Remove rust stains with lemon and salt. When old tools or faucets started to rust, Grandpa had a natural fix. He'd squeeze fresh lemon juice over the rusted spot and sprinkle salt on top. Then he let it sit in the sun for an hour. After that, he'd scrub it with a dry cloth or crumpled foil until the stain lifted. This trick worked on rusty hinges, sinks, and even garden tools. He liked it because it used what he already had in the pantry. No waste, no spending, just a little patience and elbow grease. 18. Clean wood with olive oil and vinegar. To shine up tired wood furniture, Grandpa mixed equal parts vinegar and olive oil. He'd shake it in a jar, dip a soft cloth in the mixture, and rub it into the grain. The vinegar cleaned off grime while the oil conditioned the wood. He did this once a month on tabletops, old chairs, and even the rifle stock passed down from his father. No wax, no polish, just honest ingredients that brought old wood back to life. 19. Scrub the toilet with baking soda and boiling water. Grandpa didn't need blue toilet cleaner tablets. He'd pour a cup of baking soda into the bowl and follow it with a kettle of boiling water. After letting it sit for 10 minutes, he'd scrub with a toilet brush. The baking soda deodorized while the hot water broke down stains. It was cheap, powerful, and worked just as well as anything from the store. For a deeper clean, he sometimes added a splash of vinegar to the mix and watched the fizz do its work. 20. Remove paint from hands with cooking oil. After painting the fence or barn, Grandpa never reached for paint thinner. Instead, he'd rub his hands with plain vegetable oil or lard. It loosened dried paint and moisturized his skin at the same time. After rubbing it in for a minute, he'd wipe his hands on a rag, then wash with soap and water. This trick was safer than turpentine, didn't sting cuts, and left his hands soft. Just another example of using what was already in the kitchen to get the job done. 21st. Polish leather with lard or tallow. Grandpa never bought leather polish. He kept his boots, belts, and work gloves conditioned with plain lard or tallow. After cleaning off any dirt, he'd rub a thin layer of the fat into the leather using soft cloth, let it sit overnight, then buff it in the morning. This routine kept his boots weather-resistant and his saddle supple through rain and snow. It also gave worn leather a deep, rich sheen, no chemicals required. 22nd. Sweep carpets with a damp tea leaves trick. Before vacuum cleaners were common, Grandpa used damp tea leaves to clean rugs. He'd scatter used, slightly damp tea leaves across the carpet and let them sit for a few minutes. Then he'd sweep everything up with a stiff bristle broom. The tea leaves trapped dust and prevented it from flying into the air while sweeping. It freshened the fabric and removed debris better than dry sweeping ever could. A simple hack from a simpler time. 23rd. Use charcoal to absorb odors in storage. Old trunks and toolboxes sometimes held that musty smell. Grandpa would toss a few lumps of plain charcoal inside. Not the fancy kind with lighter fluid, just pure hardwood charcoal. It absorbed moisture and odor naturally. After a few days, the container smelled like fresh wood instead of mildew. He even did this in the old root cellar and under the sink to prevent mold. Cheap, reusable, and surprisingly effective. 24. Wash clothes with rainwater. Grandpa believed clothes came out cleaner when washed with rainwater, and he was right. Rainwater was soft, with no minerals to interfere with lather. He'd collect it in barrels and use it for laundry on sunny days. Clothes rinsed in rainwater felt softer, needed less soap, and never came out stiff. He even claimed the whites came out brighter. This was a water-saving, chemical-free routine he followed long before eco-living was a trend. 25. Shine metal with wood shavings and vinegar. For polishing metal tools, Grandpa would dip a handful of fine wood shavings in vinegar and use them like a scrubbing pad. The vinegar lifted grime, and the shavings rubbed it away without scratching the surface. He especially liked this method on wrenches, doorknobs, and old stove parts. Afterward, he'd dry everything thoroughly and rub in a bit of oil to prevent rust. Nothing fancy, just workshop leftovers and vinegar doing what store-bought cleaners couldn't. 26. Ice to harden grease for easy scraping. If Grandpa spilled lard or bacon grease on the stove, he didn't smear it around with a rag. He'd toss a few ice cubes on it and wait. The grease would harden fast, and he could scrape it up clean with a spatula or a stiff card. This kept the surface from getting greasy smears and made cleanup easy. It was especially helpful when cleaning out pans or stovetop spills. 27th, use old wool socks as dust mitts. Nothing went to waste, especially old socks. Grandpa would slip his hand into a worn-out wool sock, spritz it with a little water or vinegar, and wipe down everything from windowsills to baseboards. Wool naturally clings to dust, and the hand fit made it perfect for detailed work. He'd wash and reuse them until they were threadbare. It was a humble, practical solution for everyday cleaning. 28th, deodorize hands with coffee grounds. After working with fish, garlic, or even gasoline, Grandpa didn't use scented soap. He'd grab a pinch of used coffee grounds, rub them between his palms, then rinse with cool water. The grounds scrubbed away residue, and their strong scent neutralized odors. It worked faster than anything out of a bottle. He kept a jar of dried grounds by the sink just for this purpose. 29th, dust furniture with dampened newspaper. For quick dusting, Grandpa skipped paper towels and used yesterday's newspaper. He'd lightly dampen a sheet, crumple it up, and wipe down surfaces. It picked up dust without pushing it around and left wood surfaces streak-free. This was especially handy for windowsills, baseboards, and old dressers. Afterward, he'd toss the paper in the kindling box for fire starting. 30. Clean mirrors with vinegar and newspaper. Grandpa didn't trust store-bought glass sprays. When the bathroom mirror got cloudy or streaky, he grabbed a spray bottle filled with white vinegar and water, equal parts. Then he'd crumple up an old newspaper and wipe in circular motions. The vinegar cut through toothpaste splatters and shaving cream residue, while the newspaper left zero lint behind. It dried streak-free every time. He said, "Why spend on glass cleaner when vinegar and yesterday's paper does better?" Bonus: this also worked for car windows and picture frames. 31. Remove candle wax with ice and patience. When wax dripped onto the table or floor, Grandpa didn't panic. He'd grab a few ice cubes in a rag and press them onto the wax. Once it hardened completely, he chipped it off gently with a butter knife. No scrubbing, no smearing. If any residue remained, a warm cloth or drop of vinegar lifted it. This trick worked wonders on wooden furniture and tile. He always warned, never try to wipe melted wax. You'll just rub it deeper.